She will. So give you a microphone. And yeah.
Hello, ladies. Thank you for being here today. You're very empowering. I wrote down my question. My name is Nairobi Vision. I'm a registered clinical herbalist. My company is Elemental Notes. I'm one of 2 Afro-Caribbean registered herbalists in Ontario. And what I love doing, just to talk to Ashley's point, what I'm great at doing is empowering individuals to reclaim their health through holistic education that supports disease prevention and illness prevention. So my question for you, because many of us suffer in silence, my scaling opportunity is around corporate Canada. And I'd like to know if you have any suggestions, all of you, including Professor Jimino, on how to effectively gain partnerships and collaboration opportunities as a scale-up and startup business with larger corporations within Canada.
Sure, I'm happy to start that off and hopefully spark something. One of the incubators we have in the Brampton Innovation District is called the Brampton Venture Zone. It's run by TNU. They take industry challenges, global industry challenges, and bring them down to a local level for the startups that are in their program. Part of that program is then to reach out to corporate Canada and make sure that startups in that program are being introduced to corporate Canada. We start obviously in Brampton, but it goes GTA and it can be North America wide. So there are a lot of incubators and accelerators to do that. I'm happy to introduce you to the woman who runs that and see if you'd like to be a part of their program. The other thing we do with the international soft landing pad that we have for international startups coming to Brampton is they are introduced to mentors from corporate Brampton, corporate Canada. The reason for that is to help startups that are coming from other countries primarily, in that example, learn how to sell into corporate Canada. But we do that for domestic ones as well through the Entrepreneur Center. So whatever city that you're living in or wherever your business is, there would be an entrepreneurial support system. And those centers, they're primarily run by the province or funded by the province, they would all have business advisors to help you sell into corporate Canada. And the other thing I would say is find a champion from your sector that is from a major corporation. They will help you. I've done that loads of times for people, introducing them into a corporation to have that champion within the company that you're interested in targeting. And I don't know that that's unique to Brampton. I think that most cities would do that for entrepreneurs.
I was absolutely going to say essentially the same thing. Like, again, speaking perhaps to us this idea of coaching as well, finding somebody who you can build that relationship with, as you said, who can be your champion. But it does take some work on your part, right, to figure out who is in a position, not that you're trying to take advantage of them, but who can help leverage you where you can have a partnership where you're both helping each other. And it does take some legwork in that regard. But finding that person, I think, is super important.
And you'll find that person. Juliet mentioned it, you know, the giving back. And I have found the older I get, the more my mindset, my career has shifted to giving back. I spend a lot of time doing that. And you mentioned that as well in your comment. But you'll find those people, and certainly Juliet.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add that just joining organizations that are focused on, like for instance, the Black Business Professional Association, they have a BATES program, right? That's really, I mean, highly recommended. They bring in all these experts, coaches, trainers, and help you, navigating that partnerships, right, with corporations. Plug into the cooperative sector. That's a sector in Canada that's not as visible for some reason, but that's a sector that I find that people are just willing to really help you succeed. And you begin to learn about working cooperatively, right? So instead of like what you're trying to do, you get a group of other people that are wanting to achieve the same thing, and then you work collaboratively, right? Organizations, again, Casa Foundation, the Black Advisory Hub program that they run is a great one that would help you, at least create those social networks to have those conversations, because a lot of things are really about relationships, right? So building social capital. I know Paro is taking a trade delegation to the US, for instance, where about 30 entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, are going to be pitching to these large corporations, not even in Canada, but internationally, right? So you would have the equivalent of that locally, where you get to plug into corporations here, right? And just intentional networking, right? Become more intentional. A lot of times, from our experience, we find that people go for a lot of events and they're wanting to connect with so many people. If you kind of like change that a bit to say, if I go to an event, right, maybe one or two or even three people that you really resonate with, exchange your contact info and do the follow-up. Meet for coffee, begin to build the relationship, because people know people. And then from there, things happen. And finally, your LinkedIn profile. I find LinkedIn to be really powerful, like a great place to make connections. You can see someone that's on a corporation that you want to connect with, look through their connections. Maybe you know someone there, or someone that you have a commonality with. You can go through that person to say, oh, I see that you're, connected to me. Could you do an introduction? So things like that. In the end, as women, we're really great at building relationships. We just need to wear the hat of building relationships for business, right? And we are as audacious as men. Just really be audacious, right? Put yourself out there, and the people that you're looking for will find you. Thank you.
Ashley, did you have a comment?
One thing from my personal experience, just to echo what Juliet and Claire said in relation to networking, that shows the power of networking. I shared that I came to this country 5 years ago as an international student, and I started networking. And I came all alone, I didn't know anyone. I started in a college, and that networking that I did only in the college gave me so many different hats and put me in so many different positions within the college. And Professor Gnana knows that. I was a student there. I was a student worker there. I became a full-time employee there, and some other positions as well, all the way to a governor on the board of governors of the college, which is the highest authority in the college, just by networking, nothing else, nothing special, just by, talking to people, meeting with them, and being intentional and sincere. And I'm telling you, just because to showcase the power of networking in Canada, I'll add one more thing, again, from my personal experience. Please, please, please be comfortable with failing. We women, what I noticed, we are so shy when it comes to failing. And that was me in the beginning as well. And I'll just give you statistics, again, from my personal journey. For every business that I found and became successful, I tanked at least 10 of them. At least 10 of them I failed. And the more I failed, the more comfortable I became with failing. So I'm just saying, as you start your journey, whether it's in corporate or in startups and entrepreneurship, the more you get rejection and the more you fail, just remember what I said. Ashley had failed 100 times so far. So if she did it, I can do it as well.
All right, so I think that's, even though ending on failure sounds kind of weird, I think that is a good place to end for today. So I want to thank all of our wonderful panelists so that we are continuing to be on time. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, expertise, and your insights with us today. So hopefully this continues to be a fruitful event for all of you that are here. So I think you're going to have a little bit of a time to get some coffee or what have you, but I'll let our panels are held, so it's happening next summer.
Yes, thank you guys so much. That was very insightful. Let me drop this. Wow, what an amazing panel. What an amazing panel. I'm sure we've all learned a little bit of something through that panel. I know definitely I have. And even just to reiterate what one of the panelists was saying, there's a saying that goes, your network is your net worth. So that just goes to the importance of networking. And that's what we have. We have an amazing room filled with amazing women, different people. So you never know, your future partner could be here, someone that could skyrocket you to somewhere else. So make sure that you're networking. And another thing that I got from here is not to be afraid of failure. I know everyone is afraid to fail. No one wants to not be successful. But the path to success is paved with different types of failure. Failure is an opportunity to learn. That's how I look at it. So when I fail, it's not that I failed and I've given up. It's that I've learned how to do something better. I know what to do the next time. So that's just me. That's what I took from the panel. So now we'll be moving on to the second one. So we've heard phenomenal stories of women entrepreneurs taking flight. So we're about to delve deeper into digital inclusion. So imagine a world where every woman, regardless of background, has the tools and access to thrive in the digital landscape. That's the future we're trying to build. And today, we'll explore how to get there. Leading the charge is the esteemed Dr. Wendy, founder and academic director of the Diversity Institute, known for her groundbreaking work in bridging the digital divide. Alongside her are her incredible panelists, Rosalind Lockyer, a champion of women enterprise, Janice Nixon, who empowers women entrepreneurs through innovative programs, and Julie Dimitri, a leader in supporting women's success in the financial world. Get ready to be inspired by their insights and empowered by their vision. This is a conversation that you definitely want to take notes for. So give a round of applause while we welcome our moderator and panelists to the stage.
A lot of blogs on this panel. Just saying. As Dolly Parton said, I know I'm not dumb and I know I'm not blonde. I think I am supposed to begin with a bit of a presentation on the highlights of the women entrepreneurship strategy, but I don't have a clicker. And I don't know where my presentation is. Okay. Before we get into the panel, and I really enjoyed the previous session because I think you'll find that this complements it very nicely, and the role of technology in driving innovation and women's success is especially important. So the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub is part of the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, and the focus of the hub is really to drive evidence-based strategies to advance women entrepreneurship and to help build the entrepreneurship ecosystem. And I just wanted to stress a couple of things. One is that the Diversity Institute, which leads the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, is also the research lead for the Future Skills Center. So all of the issues around digital skills, around financial literacy, and especially around confidence as being a differentiator are really reinforced by the research that's been done in the Future Skills Center. The other thing, and this was mentioned in the previous panel, that is so important to the work that we're doing, is we are based in the business school. And so our approach to equity, diversity, and inclusion is of course grounded in a commitment to social justice, but it really is driven by the conviction that leveling the playing field for women entrepreneurs, and especially women entrepreneurs from equity-deserving groups, is absolutely fundamental to Canada's economic development, but also to our achievement of our net zero goals and sustainable development goals. And we can talk more about that later. The other, some of you may have seen the article recently we had in the Globe with Morley Gunderson, who's an economist at the University of Toronto. I don't think he would describe himself as a feminist, but his argument as one of the leading economic scholars in the country is that Canada's whole innovation economic development strategy is a bit skewed. Because in Canada, unlike the US, only 10% of employment is with large business. Yet big business dominates all of the discussions. In the US, big business is 50% of private sector employment. So think about it. In Canada, 90% of jobs in the private sector are with small, medium enterprises, driven by entrepreneurs. And only 10% is in the large corporations that tend to reinforce investments in large companies, which are important, but are not the secret to our success. So there's really good economic data to show that Canada's entrepreneurship strategies and supports for small businesses are absolutely critical and fundamental. And what you'll see in the data is women are a growing percent of entrepreneurs in the country. And so how can we ignore 20% of the drivers of our economic development and growth? So we really ground everything we say and do in that sort of business case. Some of the things that have come out of the research, which are critically important, are the fact that many of the systems that have been talked about were really designed for men by men, and not intentionally exclusionary, but the very structures that have been embedded in the design of programs often excludes women, it often excludes Indigenous peoples, often exclude people who are Black, and so on. For example, 90% of women entrepreneurs are not incorporated. 90%. So if you say, to be an entrepreneur in Canada, we're only going to count majority owners of small, medium enterprises with at least one employee, you are excluding 90% of women. And you're excluding lots of Indigenous people as well, because they tend not to incorporate because of the rules around ownership. So there are some of these structural things that people simply were not aware of. And during COVID, we were able to draw attention to it. Earlier, there was mention of the Black Business Professional Association. Working with them, we also were able to identify some of the specific barriers faced by Black women, which are different. And during COVID, for example, research showed that Black entrepreneurs were twice as hard hit by COVID, in part because the businesses they were in, and half as likely or less to be able to access the supports that were put in place because of the structures. So one of the things we have to really focus on are those structural issues. What's come out recently is the critical importance of women in the drive to net zero. Women entrepreneurs are far more likely to embrace the sustainable development goals, far more likely to include environmental concerns as part of their mandates, and that's certainly true of Indigenous women, because Indigenous communities think 7 generations ahead. So again, if we're excluding women, if we're excluding Black entrepreneurs, if we're excluding Indigenous entrepreneurs, and so on, we're really missing the boat. And that's why we're very much focused on this notion of ecosystems. The women entrepreneurship strategy, the Black entrepreneurship strategy, the 2S LGBTQS+ entrepreneurship strategy the Indigenous Economic Reconciliation programs, all critical, providing much needed targeted funds. But what we really need to focus on is unlocking access to other funds. Because think about all the money that is outside of those special funds. And I was really pleased to see TD was here participating and sponsoring this event, because TD has really grappled with some of the ways in which embedded bias can shape their programs and policies with their recent audit. And more transparency and more clarity on what works for whom and who is getting access to funding is absolutely critical. I work at a university. I teach courses in entrepreneurship. In fact, my PhD class is here, because they wanted to hear what we were going to talk about today. And last year I taught a course on entrepreneurship. There was not one single example of a woman entrepreneur in the standard textbook on entrepreneurship and innovation. Incubators, accelerators, often very hostile environments. And the focus on tech, while I absolutely agree tech is a very important enabler, the focus on tech has created this notion that entrepreneurs are, white men from Silicon Valley, and excludes so many other people. The example I often use is Kylie Jenner. She wouldn't have got money from the digital supercluster. She's a billionaire at the age of 20 using Shopify, a Canadian platform. How is she not considered a digital entrepreneur? So there's lots that we need to think about, and you can read the report. I won't go through it in great detail, other than to really stress this notion that different sectors have different needs, and this intersectional approach is absolutely critical. The other really good news, in my view, is that we are seeing the percentage of women creeping up, and we are seeing women bridging the gaps in terms of exporting. Women entrepreneurs now export as much as men do. Women entrepreneurs are just as inclined to innovate. But we have to crush the stereotypes of what an entrepreneur looks like and what an entrepreneur does. I mean, how many people think of Celine Dion as an entrepreneur? She's worth $800 million. Kind of good. So we need to address those issues. We need to look at some of the things that were mentioned earlier. Financing is key, but customers are even more important. And I was really pleased that the issue of procurement and how to break into procurement was raised, and Cassandra Dorrington's here. There are other representatives of organizations that are really doubled down in helping women, Indigenous people, racialized people, and so on get access to customers. But I'm not letting educational institutions, incubators, and accelerators off the hook, because they don't do a particularly good job yet in supporting women. And there's lots we can talk about how wraparound supports become so important. I worked with the BPPA on a program called Rise Up, and there was which was for Black women. There were 700 Black women who participated. And one woman, third time round, like I was doing, I don't know, business planning or something, and she made a comment that it was the third time doing the course. And I'm like, there are no tests, you can't fail. I said to Nadine Spencer after, why is she doing it 3 times? She said community, networking, confidence. Those things are so completely lacking, particularly in COVID and particularly for women in the community, that she kept coming back over and over and over, not for the content of the course, but for the networks. So that is all I really wanted to say to sort of kick off our discussion. And to welcome our panelists, who include my good friend Rosalind Lockyer, who's the founder and CEO of the Perro Center for Women's Enterprise.